Before we get started today, I just want to give you a quick recap on a current case that we are covering, the case of Michael Jones Jr. On September 14th, 2019, Michael Jones Jr.'s wife's family, Casei Jones, reported Casey and her 4 children missing. On the next day, September 15th, 2019, at approximately 7:04 p.m., Michael Jones was found in Brantley County, Georgia, where he had crashed the family minivan, and he was actually found with his wife's deceased body in the back of the minivan. He later led investigators to the bodies of the 4 children, and he is currently arrested. The interview we have today is the former employers of Michael, who had deep interaction with Michael and a very personable relationship to where they became not only his employer but his friend, and they actually considered Michael to be a member of their family. So we hope you guys enjoy hearing some inside input as to who Michael was and a little bit of input on how Casey and Michael's relationship began. Here you go. Hi, everyone. This is Danielle. I am here today to do an interview, but I have on the phone with me Casey and her husband, Beau Delaporte. They were actually the owners of the veterinary hospital that Michael Jones worked for. Hi, guys.
Hi, Danielle.
Hello.
It's good to talk to you. I guess we'll just pretty much go right into it, and I know that you knew Michael first, right?
We actually knew Sarah first.
Sarah, Michael's ex-wife.
Right.
Okay.
She started working for us in 2008 as our receptionist.
Okay. And is that how Michael began working for you?
Yes.
Yeah, she worked for us for a while, and then supposedly he had lost his job, and she came to us and said that they were going to have to move to Vermont because her husband had lost his job, and they couldn't afford to stay in the area.
Oh.
And so I asked her to more questions about him way back when, and we could use additional help, so I had him come in and interview.
Okay. What were your first impressions of him when you interviewed him?
All positive. He was a real personable guy and very, very honest seeming and helpful, and would definitely go out of his way to help everyone in the clinic. And so we hired him immediately as a vet tech.
Wow.
And he presented himself to us as being in the Navy and being a Navy corpsman and having experience in the medical field. We really thought that would be such a great transition for him to go into being a vet tech. So it seemed like a perfect fit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can see why that would be a great experience that he had, or so he said he had, I should say. I'm still a little unsure. I don't have complete clarity on his military experience. I know he was there. Do you know for sure? Did we ever get that clarified?
No. Assumed he had, was in the Navy because he was able to plea his case in Veterans Court.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just assumed, okay, they know, they checked. Now, as far as his, tours of duty, which he told, everyone about, I have no idea about that. I mean, I've heard stories that it's not true. So
yeah, to my knowledge, he did not go on any tours of duty. And I know that his brother was actually very deeply offended by that because they lost a family member that was on tour of duty. So it was, highly offensive to them when they found out that Michael was telling people that he was, he served in the war. So,
right.
Anyways, what year did you hire him?
I believe we hired him in 2009.
Okay, so he worked for you for quite some time then.
Yes, he did.
And you both developed a friendship with him?
Absolutely. I mean, he was like a brother to me. He was my husband's, right-hand man. And, we hung out outside of work. He and Sarah and I know they had Jake. I don't know if they had Noah, had stayed with us for a point. They were in transition, trying to get a new place. And they stayed at our home for a while. So yeah, I mean, Mike was he's a very like charming guy, funny guy. Everybody loved him.
Yeah, I've heard that quite often. I know people have actually made comments about um, his physical appearance and how they said they couldn't believe that women would, like be in a love triangle with him. But it may have been you, Casey, that said to me, like, once you got to know him, just his personality and who he was as a person, people just loved him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he would go out of his way to help anyone. I remember my husband and I were moving into a new home, and he came up to me and he's like, "All right, what time do you want me there?" I'm like, "For what?" And he's like, "I'm helping you guys move." He was like
Wow.
that. Everyone just went out of his way to be helpful. And he was
Wow.
like the office prankster, always trying to get people to laugh and joke. And he kept our day, lighthearted. And also he was there in times of grief for a lot of our clients. It's a difficult process when they have to lose an animal, and he was always the one that was right there with them.
Aw. Yeah, it's hard to understand.
Yeah, mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine with both of you having such a lengthy history. I mean, you're talking years that you knew him and his ex-wife and family, and not only working for you, they became friends with you, and then this. So,
Yeah. I mean, not so much Sarah. I mean, yeah, she worked first. We worked with her side by side, but she was really at home with the kids. Mike was the one who would, come over for parties or whatever. Sarah typically stayed home with the kids. Um, so we were closer with Mike, definitely.
right. And I think you've never seen any warning signs or anything that would ever make you think that this could happen, I'm sure.
No, I mean, yeah, I think I've said to you before, like, I've never heard Mike raise his voice, or get angry with his kids. It's just, or disrespect Sarah. It was just so, I can't, this is just so, because we can't wrap our head around it, how this happened, what happened to him.
Right. Right. Okay, so over the course of the years that he worked for you, you became friends with him. When did you notice a change in him at some point, or did he just start acting different towards the end of your work relationship? We know that he robbed you, but was there any signs before the robbery, like in the months before, that would have ever?
Yeah. So starting around December, he had told us that his mom died. And, Mike and I had talked a lot because we both pretty much grew up poor and we had pretty traumatic childhoods. So, he and I talked a lot about that. And so in December, he came to us and told us this really elaborate story that his mom was an alcoholic. He was he didn't talk to her as far as he told us. He kind of completely rid his family off of, his life. But he told us his mom was an alcoholic and she got so drunk one night that she went outside in the snow and froze to death. And we were all so torn up about this story at work, and consoling him and doing whatever we could to help him get through it.
Yeah, that's a horrendous thing. That's absolutely
Yeah.
horrible. And that was December of 2014, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So after he said his mother passed away, didn't he went up to Vermont, or so he claimed at one point, didn't he?
Right. So it was Memorial Weekend. He was telling us, he has to go up and claim his mother's ashes and, I guess pay something to retrieve them. He said he told us his sister was in a psychiatric hospital because she tried to commit suicide, and so she wasn't able to. And there was just no one willing to do that for his mom. And, he said that's something he had to do. No matter how he felt about his mom, it was, his obligation as a son to do that. We were trying to talk him out of it. We're like, Mike, you don't have the money to fly up there and do this. Why don't we just make arrangements for her, ashes to come home or to come to Florida? And he's like, no, I got to do it. So, I actually gave him money to help him out, for his airfare and hotel and everything. And he was texting my husband and I while he was there and telling us how hard it was. And, just stories about what he's doing and going around his old stomping grounds. And even when he came home, we were just, wrapping our arms around him and like, we're so sorry, Mike. And, he told us where he spread the ashes. I mean, these were elaborate stories. I mean, with so much detail.
But he never actually went to Vermont because his mom to this day is alive.
That's correct. Yes.
Where was he at?
What I learned was that he was at the beach, I believe, with Sarah and the kids.
Okay.
I mean, that story came to me from Casey. I never verified it with Sarah. That's just what he told me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine. As soon as you just mentioned Casey, and during this time frame is when Casey had been working for you as well.
Right. We hired Casey as our kennel tech and groomer in November of 2018.
2014?
Or I'm sorry, 2014.
Okay. And what was your impressions of her? Was she nice? Was she kind? I've heard great things about her personality.
No, she was super sweet. Yeah.
Okay. And when you hired Casey, was it you that hired her or was it you, Beau, that hired her?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I remember Beau came home. I didn't interview her. It was actually Beau that did. And he came home and he was so excited. He's like, I just met the sweetest girl. She's Amish. She has 2 like beautiful babies. He's like, I hired her. She seems like a really good girl. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to her because I grew up in Amish country, Pennsylvania, near Lancaster County. And I worked at a farmer's market where all the Amish would come in their horse and buggies and sell their, vegetables and produce and their pies. So I can't wait to meet her.
Wow. So when you met her and you thought she was likable and all of that, you got along well and she got along with her other coworkers well?
Yeah, absolutely.
So at some point between November of 2014, and I think we have figured out, I do have the text messages of when Michael and Casei began their affair. I'm not going to share those publicly because I think they're just very personal, and but I do believe it was January of 2015 that their affair began while they both worked for you.
Right.
So during that time that their affair was going on, the whole story about his mom being dead was going on as well. And were you guys aware of the affair or did it kind of catch you off guard? I'm sure it caught you off guard. You were their employers above all else.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't aware of it until I believe around March. In the beginning, it was kind of just like people, Beau needed Mike all the time, in the exam room and to help. And we were always looking for Mike, like, where's Mike? And everybody's like, he's back in the kennel. And then after a while, we just, I remember my husband and I saying, like, you think something's going on that Mike's always back in the kennel? It's just, there's no reason for him to be back there. It's just odd.
Yeah. And Casei, her primary position was back in the kennel, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. When you figured it out. I know we have spoken about this. Do you want to like kind of elaborate on how you handled that? Or because, I mean, most workplaces don't really want that going on. And I know that you didn't either. It wasn't something that you wanted to have going on at your place of work, but even ethically, you know, he was married. Mike was married. He had 3 kids. Casey was married. She had 2 kids. So it was kind of, I'm sure that put you in a difficult position.
Yeah, it did. And I want to also just say that, I mean, looking back now, we realize what Mike was doing. So, you know, I don't remember the exact month it started, but Mike had been coming to me and telling me about how, you know, Sarah was being so mean to him, just making him do everything with the house. They had a lot of intimacy problems he was telling me about. But I mean, now looking back, I think he was, you know, kind of preparing me for him having this affair, you know, finding out that, because I didn't get it at the time. You know, Mike was my brother, so I was just like, Mike, I'm so sorry. You know, what can we do to help you? And he was like, it's just not working out between us. I just don't feel it anymore. So I just wanted to point that out. That's what was going on too. So
yeah, it's almost like he was trying to make it justifiable.
absolutely.
You know, like here he was, this man who was married, who was unhappy. So let me paint this picture to my friends and my bosses that I'm unhappy and my marriage is unhappy. Maybe they'll accept it a little better.
Right.
That's some deep manipulation. I mean,
Yes.
I think I said this yesterday and I don't know who I said it to. And it's like he was an evil genius.
Yeah.
Because he's very smart. From everything I've heard and seen and followed and researched, he's done a horrible, horrible, unthinkable thing. But he's very smart, and that's scary. Because just the lies that he's told over the years and the manipulation that he's told over the years. You know, this was in 2015 that you guys were going through this, and we're at the end of 2019. So that was almost 5 years ago.
Yeah. And I think I want to go to the lie with the mom. You know, I always thought, I'm like, you know, why did he pick to choose that lie? Like a lie about his mom. But my mom was murdered when I was 10, and I confided in Mike. You know, I don't tell a lot of people about it, but she was murdered by my sister's father. And I think he really played on that. And that's where this lie came. He knew he had my sympathy. He knew I would give him money. You know, it was just, when I look back at it now, I'm like, that was a cut so deep that he did to me.
Absolutely, because he found one of your weaknesses and something that had severely traumatized you, and it altered the course of your entire life when your mother was murdered.
Right.
And he knew that, and he used that against you, and that's horrible.
Yeah,
It's
his
horrible.
manipulation is so deep. It goes beyond, I think, anything we could really understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that it's scary how manipulating he is. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, and I've followed since I was younger. You know, I think the first true crime thing, if you know, since that's the term for it these days, is true crime. But the first actual huge murder case I followed when I was younger was the O.J. Simpson case. I like to understand what makes people do what they do, and I'd have to say that this is the first time I'm left speechless.
Yeah.
And I've researched a lot and seen a lot, just watching trials and hearing stuff, and it's hard to even make sense of.
Right.
Did you ever like feel manipulated by him, or were there any stories or anything like that he shared with you to try and take advantage of you in any way?
No, not till the end. And you know, I was really hurt by what he did to us, and I have a different reaction when people do what Mike did to our family. And so, you know, once I realized that he was a manipulator and dishonest. And he did what he did to us, that, after the lie, regarding his mother. And, I just signed him off. I'm like, yeah, at that point, I want nothing to do with him, and so, because I tried to surround myself with good people. And at that point, he was never not a good person anymore, and so is much different. She wanted to understand why he did what he did, but I was the opposite. I just want to move on with our busy life and just delete him from it.
Absolutely. Like remove the toxic, be done. And
Yeah, that's how I deal with a lot of issues like that throughout life.
right. That's probably a good trait to have, because when you sit and dwell on it, it can truly eat you alive trying to find the answers, especially when it's somebody who's hurt you so deeply. And I know you considered him to be one of your best friends, like a brother.
Yeah, he
So
was. I mean, we hung out a lot, and I included him in a lot of the things that we did, just because I knew that he didn't have very many friends around here, and I enjoyed hanging with him. And he was, he's seemingly a really good person. Seemed to love the kids, his and ours, and our kids loved him too. And and to go back to a question you brought up a little while ago, I was the first one that he confided in about his affair with Casey when that started.
okay.
And
And
I remember the day that he told me about it. And I think what I told him back then was, you know, be careful. I understand, what's happening with your life, but just don't bring it to work. When I tell, as long as my employees check their drama at the door when they come in and they do their job right, and then I don't really get involved with their personal lives.
right, that's understandable, because
Yeah.
there's a separation there, your
Yeah.
work and your personal life. And that's respectable that you choose to not get involved in that. Um, did you see a change in him at all, Beau, when he began his affair with Casey, or was it just the same things that your wife saw?
No, I saw a huge change. I mean, he went from being a most loyal, dependable employee to quite the opposite. It was obvious that he was, manipulating and trying to get to do new things that he had never done. And so I think up until the point that he decided to have the affair, I think that he was, living a pretty straight life as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of the end for him when he chose to do that. But hindsight, Casey and I are finding out now that he, um,
Sexually assaulted another
yeah,
employee.
yeah, he has done that to multiple employees over the years, unbeknownst to me, and I would have never put up with that, and I would have put a stop to that immediately as soon as I found out about it, but they never came to me and told me anything about it, and so up until that point, I thought everything was perfect.
Yeah, it's not only upsetting as being his employer to find that out, but to be his, you were his friend when he was doing those things, and he was doing it right under your nose.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, it's crazy. It's crazy that he even was able to make sexual advances towards your other employees, but his manipulation, I feel like, was so strong that those employees didn't even do anything about it, or
Right.
not that they could do anything about it, but they didn't. I don't know why they didn't report it or anything like that. Maybe they
Yeah.
were scared of him, or I don't know.
I don't know if they were scared of him. I think it was, I mean, at least the one employee I know wasn't scared of him. Um, but I think it was more like they didn't want to disrupt the camaraderie that we had in the office, because we were such a close knit bond. And they
Right.
didn't, so I know the one employee, it was just, she was like, I'm just going to quit because number one, I don't know if they'll believe me, she thought. And number two, I don't want to, people to get mad at me. And which is, I don't know why we as women do that to ourselves, but we always put the blame on ourselves for things. But
Right.
um, and I just wanted to add too that other things that were happening, around that time, December and on, was Mike was missing a lot of work, claiming to be sick. and money was, just randomly coming, missing from our deposits and our cash drawer, our donation box that we had for a local shelter. And, I remember, 'cause it would never in my mind that Mike would steal, because, whatever he asked me for, I would have given him. He knew that. But he was trying to blame it on another employee, one that we've had, for 10 years. And I, once that was ruled out that, okay, she wasn't it, towards the end, around June, he started blaming it on Casey. And
Case.
Yeah, he was actually putting the blame on her.
At that point, now you said June, right? He started putting the blame on her.
I think it was around June, because robbery,
okay.
Everything kind of came to a head in June.
Right. And was he still with Sarah at this time? Like, were him and Sarah still married, or at least Sarah thought they were still happily married, which is sad.
I can't answer that, because I didn't talk to Sarah, so I was only taking what Mike, was telling me. So according to Mike, he had left Sarah and he was living with Casey,
Okay.
And, he made it seem like he and Sarah, it was like a little contentious, but she was still, letting him be with the kids. I mean, that's all coming from Mike, though. I have no idea if it's true or not, but.
Right. Right. Yeah. I know at one point, I want to say it was during that same time, he actually wasn't living with Casey and had moved in to one of Casey's friends, who was a former coworker. He stayed with her for a month.
Right. I read that too.
Yeah. And never paid her rent in the month that he was there. So yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around all of it.
Right.
How did Casey act, like when money started coming up missing? And
well, that I didn't really confront her at first. He was just kind of putting it in my head. I don't like to confront people if I don't have enough, evidence or proof. So he was just saying, like, hey, I come up here at night sometimes to let, aggressive dogs out, or to help. We had a lady doing the kennel who sometimes needed help with bigger dogs. And he was saying that I go in the back to do the kennel, and I leave Casey up front where she has access to your deposit box and things like that. So he was kind of planting that in our head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And he was supposed to be like madly in love with her. And
well, at that time too, he was kind of telling me, it's not what he thought. He, was saying a lot of negative things about her. And I said to him, well, are you going back to Sarah? And he's like, no, I don't want to be with Sarah either. And that's when my husband and I, this was the end of June, we said, Mike, you've got to get your life straight. Why don't you come stay with us? You need to get away from both women, just focus on your kids and your job, and, take a breather. And he was like, thank you guys so much. That's what I'm going to do. And that's when he came and moved in our house.
Wow. Wow. So he was living in your house. At some point, things did become contentious and you terminated his employment. You had shared with me that you guys had purchased a car for him and he was making the payments. And when you terminated the employment, he took off with the car and robbed your clinic. Is that how it went down? Or
yeah, just now before that, we had decided to let Casey go because it was just too much with, like what I was saying, he and her were fighting, and it was, and we had suspicion then because Mike was telling us that she was the one taking the money. So we had let her go. And then Mike moved in our house. And the same day, actually, Mike moved in our house, I received a call from Casey. And she was so upset. I guess she had just found out that Mike left her. And she said, you don't know the guy who's living with you. His mom is not really dead, and he was never in the Navy. And she goes, was saying, like, I would never steal from you guys. I love my job. I got mixed up with the wrong guy. He's not what I thought. And so, of course, that, hit us like a wave. It was.
Yeah, I'm sure that was like a ton of bricks coming at you.
Yeah.
Um, and did you approach Mike about that?
I did. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I actually told my husband about it first because Mike was upstairs in our game room playing with all the kids. That's just what he did, you know. And I told my husband, and my husband was just in shock. And he said, I can't deal with them. You need to deal with them. I can't right now." So I called Mike downstairs and I just looked at him and I said, "Is your mom really alive?" And he didn't say a word. He just looked at me and I said, "Get out of my house." And so he went and got his stuff and walked right past me, slammed the door, and left. And at that point, as soon as he left our house, is when he went to our hospital and robbed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So almost like as soon as you caught on to his lies, he said, "Peace, I'm done," and then robbed you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
No
Wow.
explanation, nothing, you know.
Beau, did you ever have a opportunity to speak with him about what he did and his lies, or?
Um, no, I don't believe I talked to him after that. Did I?
No,
We
you
texted
didn't.
back and forth a few
Yeah.
times, and but I never spoke to him again after that. Um, he's he was, I kind of deleted him from my life at that point. So I think you did, didn't you, Case?
Well, I mean, I didn't talk to him until after he was arrested.
Okay. So I guess that brings us up to the day of the robbery. You had hired Casey back, and there was another, I've read the actual police report from the robbery. And it does go into detail how another employee arrived and found that your clinic had been broken into. Do you want to just kind of explain how that all happened, or the series of events of that day, or?
Yeah, sure. My husband had to step away, just so you know, he's not here.
Okay.
But so Casey had, and I had talked after Mike left our house. We had, I don't remember, she called me or I called her. And she was really upset and crying. And I felt so bad for her because she said she had, no idea that he, was all these lies he's created, and she loved her job. Could she please have her job back? She didn't have any part in the theft, that was going on, the stealing of the money. So we actually hired her back, and we said, we're, sorry, we had no idea who Mike was. So we hired Casey back. And that's when the next day the clinic was open, Casey and another employee found that it was robbed. And we came in and immediately called the police.
Wow. I know he stole a significant amount from you, which included a handgun and prescription medication and money. And actually, he took the car too, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he took all that.
And how long was it before he was arrested?
Um, Gosh, I would have to look back on the police report. I can't think right now.
Yeah, I think the police report I have doesn't have like an arrest date. It's just the initial police report from, um, it might, maybe I overlooked it. Okay, so at some point he gets arrested. How does he get arrested?
So that's a crazy story too. So we had no idea where he was. He had fled. So he was texting my husband and saying he was going to turn himself in, but never did. It was just another lie. And, the whole time I'm asking Casey, because she was still working for us, I'm like, have you heard from Mike? And she said no. And she's like, I don't want to hear from him. Well, we got a call from, I guess, one of her friends to tell us that she indeed actually knew where he was and was in communication with him and had apparently sent him money via Western Union to help him come back to Florida.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was just another blow to us. And one day she came to work wearing his shirt under her scrub top. And I knew what Mike wore. I mean, I see him every day. He didn't have a lot of clothes. I know his shirts. And
Right.
we ended up following her to a tattoo shop. And in the parking lot of the tattoo shop is where Mike's car was. And so I immediately called the police. The police came and went inside the tattoo shop and found Mike holding her hand while she was getting a tattoo. And, they brought him out in handcuffs and everything.
Wow. I do want to clarify on this interview, I misspoke. It was not your guest house that Casey was hiding Michael in. It was a totally different person's guest house.
Yeah, I don't know who they are.
Yeah, it was Casey at the time was staying in the guest house of a different employer, I believe, that she worked at and was friends with. And she was actually hiding Mike in that guest house and had him staying in that guest house with her while you and your husband were trying to, locate him or have him arrested, and he's telling you he's going to turn himself in.
Right.
So it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I'm guessing after that, you didn't really have much communication with Casey or Mike, either one?
No, I didn't. When she came out of the tattoo shop, she was holding his wallet and car keys and told me that Mike was threatening her and forced her to come, meet him there at the tattoo shop, which I knew wasn't the truth. So I got, his keys and his wallet. And in his car is where we found all of the stuff he stole from us. And that's when I discovered he actually stole drugs from us because they were not missing in our inventory. And so the only thing I'm assuming is that he was able to change it because he had access to, all of our computers and he knew the passwords for it. So that's when we discovered exactly what he took.
Wow. And that cell phone actually held some pretty interesting information.
Yes, it did.
It held a lot of interesting information that just probably will make listeners' heads spin a little more like, oh my gosh, because there was text messages in that cell phone, and the text messages were from Casey to Michael, but it was somebody supposedly texting on Casey's behalf, and I believe it was you that she was saying it was, wasn't it?
No, I believe it was her former boss.
Her former boss.
Not me. She was pretending to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Casey was texting Michael from her own personal phone, pretending to be her former employer, who was texting Michael, telling Michael that that Casey was in the hospital and all kinds.
Yeah, like in a coma, had a tube. It was like really outrageous things.
Yeah, it was pretty extreme, and I believe it mentioned a pregnancy.
It did.
Yeah, that she was having complications with a pregnancy, and it was Casey texting, but her boss was telling Michael that, she wasn't going to make it, the baby wasn't going to make it, and because Casey was trying to get him back from New Mexico to where he had fled, supposedly.
Yeah. We actually talked to the friend in New Mexico because after we found out that's where he went, we called that friend, and, that friend had no idea that Mike was on the run. He just told his friend that he had separated from his wife and wanted to get a fresh start. And
right.
Yeah.
And
it was another victim.
Just to clarify, this was in after the robbery. This wasn't over a period of months. This was in a short period of time that this all happened.
Yeah. I'm thinking a couple weeks. I don't really know for sure, but
right.
I the arrest report. But
right, and we know that Mercalli was not born until December of 2016. So, and that's the first child that she had with Mike.
Right.
So, the hospital story, as far as we know, we cannot verify to be true. From what all we've gathered, and just different people that we've spoken to, that hospital story was given simply just to get Mike back to New Mexico, and that was it.
Right.
So during that time, the days to maybe possible 2 weeks that you guys were trying to get in touch with Mike or get him to turn himself in, Casey was still working for you, right?
That's correct.
She was never hospitalized to your knowledge, or had...
I mean, one day she left work early. The day that she was at the tattoo shop, and she told us she was going to the hospital because she wasn't feeling well.
So other than that, besides saying that she was going to the hospital the day that she was actually found at the tattoo parlor with him, she was coming to work and she was never in a coma to your knowledge because she was coming to work?
That's correct.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify that for our listeners, that the texts that were being sent to Michael were not true. Casey was not in the hospital. She was not in a coma. She was going to work every day at the veterinary hospital that you own. So, I mean, you're a pretty reliable source to confirm that she was at work.
Yes.
Did you, so after Michael was arrested, then you basically didn't really speak to him ever again, or Casey?
No, I spoke to Mike the first time. Well, I spoke to Mike twice after the robbery. The first time was, I'm thinking it was November. I'd have to look back on my messages because I also messaged him at that time too, but I received like what I call a drunk dial from him. And he told me he was back in Vermont, that he left Casey, and she was crazy. He was, of course, downing her. And I was like, okay, you're going back with your family? And he's like, no, I'm not getting back with Sarah. I'm just going to be with my kids. And I was like, Mike, and he was very apologetic to what he did for us, did to us, as far as the robbery. And he felt like he was backed into a corner and, trying to uphold his relationship with Sarah and then his relationship with Casey. And it just caused a lot of stress on him.
So he was basically trying to have two families and manage it all. And he dealt with that by stealing, lying, robbing, all of the above.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a normal way to deal with things at all, but that's how he dealt with it.
And he also had kind of said it was PTSD. He didn't mention like what the PTSD, like what it was from. He just said, I have PTSD, and that's what happens if I'm pushed into a corner.
Okay. I personally do believe he probably does have PTSD, but I believe that stems from his childhood.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And it's not something we are prepared to talk about yet, but yeah, I that may have been very true about him having PTSD.
And also he was, saying that Casey is following him to Vermont, and that he doesn't want confrontation. He wants her to just leave him alone, and that her family was calling him worried because they didn't know where she was. So, anyways, that conversation ended like nothing. He was obviously drunk, so I had called Casey then and had said, hey, I just got off the phone with Mike. You guys have to stop. There's kids involved. Mike has 3 kids. He's going back to, you have your 2 kids. Just don't follow him. Just let him go. And she, was very nice, but just said she had he stole money from her, I guess, she said, out of a bank account, and she needed to go see him face to face, is what she said. So I just left it go. I mean, there was no kind of talking sense into either one of them at that point.
Right. And this was, when did you say this was?
I'd have to look at my phone to double check because, I'm really bad with dates, but I think it was around November. So that'd be 2015.
Okay. Could it possibly have been 2016? Because
that was the second time he called me. Casey was pregnant with Mercalli.
Okay.
So he called me twice. And the second time he called me was another drunk dial. But he was back in Vermont again, he told me. And he was just saying, he really effed up his life, that he left her again, but she's pregnant now. And, and at that point, I didn't want anything to do with him, because the first time he called me, I really thought he was going to, get his life straight, when he called me back in 2015. But then I think it was like just a couple months, like after he called me on Facebook, Casey and Mike were posting that they were back together, and really, kind of things they were posting on Facebook was pretty much a slap in Sarah's face. It was
Oh,
really
wow.
hurtful stuff.
That
So,
would be very hurtful, definitely.
yeah. So, and it wasn't like it was a private, it was a public Facebook page. So it was almost seeming to be out there, like, it was.
Yeah.
So when he called me in 2016, I kind of was just like, I don't want to hear it, and I just.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've actually been in Sarah's shoes. I, had an ex-husband who did something similar to me, and it is hurtful. It is extremely hurtful, and it's even more hurtful when it's blasted in your face on social media. I can't imagine what she felt. I can't imagine what Sarah felt at that time, because I've been there and I've been through it, and it is a terrible, terrible feeling, and it's not kind to do that. I don't believe that's kind at all. Um, and I do feel like he played both Casey and Sarah against each other. You
Oh,
know,
sure. Yeah.
he bounced from woman to woman. And unfortunately, when that happens, the most common reaction is for the women to dislike each other, because they see each other as competition, instead of disliking the man who's causing it. That's like the number one reaction when this stuff happens. I've been there. I've done it. Like, I've disliked the woman that my ex-husband put me in that situation with, when in reality, he was the problem. It was him that was wrong, and it was both of us who were being manipulated and played. And I know now, when he went back to Vermont the second time, I think he was actually there. I want to say that I've figured out, for a period of 4 months, he left Casey that time in 2016, when she was pregnant with Mercalli. So, he left her when she was significantly pregnant, and she spent a lot of her pregnancy without him as her support. And I believe he went back right before she had Mercalli.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I didn't, I was really upset at that point at him, and I didn't, people would come, because a lot of our coworkers were, still friends with him, and friends with Casey. They were friends on Facebook, but I just, at that time, I didn't want to hear anything. So I kind of just muted it.
Right, right. Yeah, I totally understand. It's a very, very, very sad situation all the way around. There's been a lot of people hurt, I believe, and even more so now. There's so many people traumatized by what he's done. But even you yourself, and I believe your husband has said this as well, that even though he did all these things, you would have never imagined this.
No, never. I mean, like I said before, I've never seen Mike angry. He loved children. When he would come over, we'd be like, "Where's Mike?" And he'd be with the kids in the pool, or, always doing something with them. And it wasn't like fake, it was genuine. It felt really genuine. And
Right.
that's just, so when I first heard about, a coworker sent me the flyer showing that Casey and the kids were missing, and someone had said, that Mike was missing too, according to his mom's Facebook. And I was like, what in the heck? You don't think anything. I'm just like, okay, well, did they get in another fight? And then when I texted Sarah and she said Mike had been there the past 2 weeks, then I'm like, I hate saying it because it's, but my initial thought was, oh, okay, Mike left Casey and, she left or something.
Right.
My mind would never have went to murder, and, the horrifying realization of what he done. Like, I couldn't, my mind wouldn't go there. I just couldn't.
Right.
I couldn't
Right.
imagine that the Mike I knew could kill.
Absolutely. And especially with you owning a veterinary hospital and him being so close and good with animals, usually, I'm not saying that people who are good with animals will never commit a murder, but with him being so, you mentioned him being so kind with children and so great with animals, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Uh,
let me tell you a story. Like he just wasn't kind. He was like we had a lady, we have kind of strange clients come in sometimes, and she did not want her cats anymore, and she wanted my husband to euthanize them.
oh my
And
gosh.
my husband was not there at the time. I think we were at lunch or somewhere. And so when I came back, Mike is like, hey, I have two cats here. And I'm like, for what? And he's like, I had to save them. He's like, this
Oh,
lady wanted to kill these cats. And she said if we didn't, take them, that she was just going to go somewhere else and do something with them. And so we still have those cats today in our clinic.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
and Mike named them Lucky and Chance. And so
Oh,
that's,
wow.
yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that's just so, that makes me even more confused because
that's this whole
how?
thing is so, yeah. I mean, and
How?
we have a clients come in, today, and say to us after, the murders and say, no, not Mike. He was there for me. He helped me get through my grief with, the loss of my pet. And with me, with the murder of my mom, I mean, he helped me so much, more so than my husband even helped me, because my husband never really had to deal with that kind of trauma. And so I think Mike and I, the way we talked and stuff, I felt like he really got it. Um,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I
I can
mean,
see why you felt like that. Wow, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to process. You mentioned that Mike drunk dialed you quite or a couple times. Did he drink quite a bit that you know of?
no, I mean, yeah, he liked to drink. Like if we were having a party, he would get like funny, crazy, but never where I would say he was an alcoholic or
Okay.
that he had a problem. I never saw him like drink and drive or anything like that. He was not like that. Now
Okay. So
what?
he's more like a social drinker, not like
Yeah,
somebody who sat back and got drunk every day.
no, I mean, I think in the evenings he liked to have some beers or something, but I would never, the time I knew him up until 2015, I would never consider him an alcoholic.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, you have shared a lot of information. I'm sure our listeners are going to be happy to hear what you've had to say because it does shed a lot more light on especially Mike, and how manipulating he is. Is there anything else that you want to add in or
Um, I just kind of want to be a little voice for Sarah. I know you and I have talked, but I think she's getting a lot of criticism, and I just want people to kind of think what she's going through at this moment. It's you know I wasn't as close to Mike as she was, but it's unreal to us, and so I think it has to be. I can't even explain what she must be going through right now, and trying to raise her children. So just
yeah, I can't imagine either. To know that your ex-husband has murdered his wife and his, two stepsons and his two biological daughters with his wife has to be a horrendous, horrendous, like living nightmare, to be able to face that. So I'm sure that I could never imagine what she's going through.
yeah,
And she has faced a lot of backlash. She has. I've been one of those people, and I don't want to say it's backlash for me. I just have questions, There are
yeah,
questions. There are questions that I have, and quite a few people have. I know that I would be willing to talk to her, just as you as I talked today, if there's anything that she wanted to share or anything that she wanted to clarify. She wants to set the record straight because it is unfair to face backlash if you're not involved in something. It is completely unfair. It's and her kids are victims as well. They are going to have to grow up the rest of their lives knowing what their father did. And that is very, very sad. I can't imagine how that's going to affect them throughout their entire lives.
Oh, it's a huge burden to
Yeah.
have. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I just also want to say to Casey's family that my deepest sympathies, and to her mom. No mom should ever have to bury her daughter and her grandchildren. And I'm so sorry. I
Yeah.
think we all that knew them wish we could go back and, make some kind of change and stop something. I'm so sorry.
Right. Yeah. I know. Even though we've shared things on here about Casey tonight, that in no way means that anybody thinks that she was deserving of this. You're just telling your side of the story and what you experienced, and what you went through as a victim of Michael. And Casey, unfortunately, was in his life at that time. And, that's just how things played out. That's how it happened. And it in no way means that she was a bad person or she deserved to be murdered. She is 100% a victim. Absolutely a victim. She should be here today. And what happened to her is absolutely unthinkable. And her poor babies, it never happened.
No, it shouldn't have.
So I want to thank you for your time and for talking to me. It's been great to talk to you. And I will let you get back to your busy day. I know you have a lot going on. So we will talk to you later, Casey. And tell your husband we said it was great to talk to him.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'd like to personally thank Casey and Beau for doing this interview with me. We're thankful for the insight that was given during this interview. It gives a lot of perspective into the relationship of Casey and Michael and Sarah a little bit as well, and how things kind of started going downhill for Michael. We did discuss in the interview a cell phone. You can see the video of that cell phone and the actual text messages on our YouTube channel. The video is actually in the playlist for the Casei Jones case. Until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.